Hey guys, today we will be doing a science lab experiment where we talk about density and its relationship to um, explain why things either sink or float in water. So you should have this page right here, Float Your Boat, Part 1 background, should be glued into your science journal. On the page after, Common Elements. And then it should be glued right here. Now, through this experiment, we'll be answering some questions that's on that sheet, as well as I'll be giving y'all some critical information that's very important for you to know and understand for your test. So first, let's start off by looking at this page that we're talking about. Well, first, let's talk about what is density. So, density is what determines whether something sinks or floats in water. Density is actually a combination of two things that we have already talked about in class. So, go to the top of your page. I know it's upside down. Give me just a second. So, at the top of your page, I want you to add two definitions. So first, we're going to add mass. Mass is the amount of matter in something. And we're going to add volume. And volume is the amount of space something takes up. All right, so add those two definitions to the top of your page. Now let's talk a little bit about mass and density. Let me get my camera flipped back around. All right, so I have two spheres here to talk about volume and mass. Now, like we just wrote down, volume is the amount of space something takes up. So looking at these two, which one takes up more space? Which one is bigger and takes up more space in our world? Right? This yellow one is bigger. You can tell because it completely covers. Right? See, I can still see a little bit. All right, the yellow one is bigger. So the yellow has more volume. Now, I know you can't feel this, but you can definitely hear it. If let's check their mass. I'm going to drop this yellow one, and that falls pretty quiet, right? So it does not have much mass. Now, if I drop the silver one, ooh, that's a lot louder, right? Because this has much more mass than this one does. This one weighs a lot more. Density is a combination of mass and volume. Density is how much matter something has relative to the amount of space it takes up. So this ball here, this yellow ball, has more volume, but it has less mass. This silver ball has more mass, but in a smaller space. So this silver ball has a higher density because it has more matter condensed into a smaller space. So the matter in this one is packed much, much, much tighter than the matter in this yellow ball. That's why the yellow ball I can squeeze a little bit because it has a little bit looser matter. And this one, I can't squeeze at all. This is rock solid, hard as it can be. So let's go back to our sheet. All right, now, what is density? Well, like we just said, density is a combination of mass and volume. So density is going to be the amount of matter in something relative to the amount of space it takes up. Right, so for density, what is density? Density is the amount of matter let me rewrite that smaller so it's easier to fit on this line. Sorry, give me 1 second. So density is the amount of matter in something relative to the amount of space it takes up. All right, so the amount of matter in something relative to the amount of space it takes up. What that means is density is something with higher density is going to have a lot of matter in a very small space, like this ball. And something with less density is going to have less matter spread out over a larger area, like this ball. All right, question 2. What makes something sink in water? What must be true for something to float in water? Well, everything has a density to it. Super close. Hold on. What is going on? Okay. Everything has a density to it. And what determines if something floats in water is if the density of the item is higher than the density of water, then it'll sink. If the density of the item is less than the density of the water, it'll float. In other words, if something is more dense than water, it'll sink. If it is less dense than water, it'll float. So if we look back at our paper, what we're going to do is look at this table here. And these first 2 columns we're going to fill out before we do the test. And this last one we'll fill out afterwards. Oh, sorry. Let's come right back up here and finish this. So, what makes something sink in water? Let's say it will sink if it's more dense than water, and it will float if it's less dense than water. All right, so on this chart, we're going to fill out this column and this column for each of these items before we do the experiment. Then we will do the test and record our results on whether each of these items sinks or floats. So let's start with marshmallow. Do you think a marshmallow is more or less dense than water? Right? Think about how much a marshmallow might weigh, how it might feel. I've never eaten one before. So do you think a marshmallow is more or less dense than water? And then write what you think right here. You can just write more or less, or you can even just write M or L. Then in the next box, we're going to predict whether we think the marshmallow will sink or float. So in this box, you'll just write sink or float, or you can even just write S for sink or F for float. And over here, you can just write more for more dense, or L for less dense if you want. All right, so let's go down and do the rest of these. Do you think a penny is more or less dense than water? And do you think a penny will sink or float? And do you think a ping pong ball is more or less dense than water? If you're not sure, this is a ping pong ball. Do you think a ping pong ball will sink or float? Next is a golf ball. Do you think it is more or less dense than water? And a golf ball. Do you think a golf ball will sink or float? Metal paperclip. Will it have more or less dense than water? Will it sink or float? Do you think an iron nail is more or less dense than water? Do you think the iron nail will sink or float? And do you think a piece of aluminum foil, like so, do you think this piece of aluminum foil is more or less dense than water? Do you think it will sink or float? And then we will go to do our tests, and then we will come to these questions down here, these questions at the bottom afterwards. All right, so now let's run our tests. So the first thing we're going to test is here. Let me set up my camera. Give me just one moment. Slide that back. Okay. All right. So we are on a marshmallow. And remember, all the way to the right is where we are going to record whether it actually sinks or floats. So here is our marshmallow. I'm going to put it in the water, and it floats. Awesome. All right, so for actual results on marshmallow, we will write floats. Very good. Now look at this right here. You'll see all this kind of foggy haze coming off from the marshmallow. What do y'all think that is? What's happening? Look, if I bounce it, we might even get a little more. You'll see it moving around. All that kind of fuzziness coming off of this marshmallow, like a fog being left. So that is actually the marshmallow dissolving. All right, y'all remember when you tested the substances, when we looked at those to see if they were soluble in water, right? Soluble in water means it will dissolve in water. So do you think this marshmallow is soluble in water? Well, we're watching it dissolve right here. You can see all that haziness coming off of it. So yes, this marshmallow is soluble in water. It can dissolve in water. All right, let's move on to our next one on the list is the penny. Have it up here somewhere. There it is. All right, just a regular copper penny. All right, now do we think this will sink or float? 1, 2, 3. Boom, straight to the bottom. We'll do it again in case you didn't see it. You ready? 1, 2, boom. There it goes. Okay, so remember, come back to our chart in our science journal. For the penny, the actual results where it sinks. All right, now for the ping pong ball. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. All right, so the ping pong ball, go a little higher here. The ping pong ball floats. So if the ping pong ball floats, is it more dense or less dense than water? It'll be less dense. So come to our actual results, and ping pong ball floats. Okay. Next is the golf ball. Does the golf ball sink or float? Sinks. Let's go to our chart. Golf ball, actual results. It sinks. Next is a metal paper clip. This is the one that most of my students in my other class got incorrect from their predictions. So what do we think? Will the paper clip sink or float? All right, ready? 1, 2, sinks. Straight to the bottom. Look, you can see it. See it right here? Yep, sank straight to the bottom. All right, next, we'll see metal paper clip, sinks. All right, iron nail. Think it'll sink or float. See our nail in here, and 3, 2, 1. Iron nail sinks. And last is our aluminum foil. See, just a thin piece of aluminum foil from the house, and it will float. See it? Yeah, so the foil also floats. So go to your results. Actual results for the foil is it floats. Okay. Very interesting. Let's bring this back up and we can finish up our worksheet here. All right, so remember, this is where we recorded our information, right? The marshmallow floats, the penny sinks, the ping pong ball floats, the golf ball sinks, the paper clip sinks, the iron nail sinks, and the foil floats. Now, did the results surprise you? Yes or no? To answer this question, just think about what your predictions were. Did you think the paper clip would float? Well, if you did, it sank. And so, do you think the results of the paper clip, did it surprise you? Just look up here and think about if any of your predictions were incorrect. If they were, just talk about them right here. And then last is our question at the bottom. Is density the same as weight? And it's actually not the same as weight. Density is not the same as weight. All right, and it also says to explain. Well, weight is determined by how much gravity pulls on an object. Right? So the gravity from the earth pulls everything down and keeps it on earth, and that's what determines your weight. Your density is actually determined by, what did we say? The amount of matter something has relative to the amount of space it takes up. So, is density the same as weight? No, comma. Density is the amount of matter and space something has, period. Weight is how hard gravity pulls on something. All right, and that's got it. Just make sure that this page is attached in your science journal. I will be checking for it for your science journal check, which is a test grade, and make sure you put it in your table of contents. You can just write your title right here, should be in your table of contents. Float your boat, page, whatever page you put it on. All right, guys. Thanks for your attention. Have a good day.